Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general mid-month reading for the sign of Capricorn, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the last 2 weeks of November. I hope you're well. I'm using the tarot view of this for you today. Here we go. So if you haven't seen these videos before, they're structured slightly differently to the main monthly reading in so much as we are looking for the lesson. I believe that there is wisdom or indeed a lesson contained within every interaction and experience that you may have. But sometimes, because we get bogged down with the minutiae of day-to-day existence, we miss that bigger picture, you know. And so, as an exercise in perspective, what we're going to do is pull 3 cards to see where your energy is right now, like what is going on with you, and then we will pull 3 cards to find out why you are there in the first place. Now, sometimes, almost always, it's trying to show you something about yourself, but it can also be, you know, trying to help things along, move out of your life, perhaps encourage and accept new things coming in. We won't know until the cards hit the table, and then we'll close out with 3 cards of advice. So I hope that that makes sense to you. Let's get 3 cards for Capricorn's current energy, please. There's the first one drifted out to the side there. We have the 7 of Swords. I have 2 more cards for Capricorn, please. We have the 9 of Cups in reverse, and we have something that's fallen down here. We've got the 8 of Cups down here, but it fell out to the right, so I'm not going to take it. It didn't jump to the left. But I'm going to put it to the side, because I think it might turn out to be, you know, relevant at some point. Let's one more card for Capricorn, please. Thank you. We have the Moon, right? So this is pretty clear to me. There you are at the bottom of the deck. We have the Capricorn card of the Queen of Pentacles right there. So, read in its entirety here. I'll shut the window in a moment. The cauldron's burnt down. What we have is a situation where I feel that slowly you are starting to realize that you have been misguided in some sort of way, right? The 7 of Swords card here is a card that traditionally talks about deceit. I mean, it can talk about risk-taking as well, but it talks about deceit of some kind, and being followed up immediately by the 9 of Cups. It's kind of peeking through the curtain to look at this 9 of Cups. The 9 of Cups being, you know, your emotional well-being. You as an individual, where you take responsibility for that, you know, what makes you happy, what you do to make you happy, the ways in which you rely on other people that you shouldn't to be happy, you know. It feels like a dawning realization that actually there's a lot more going on with you than you had anticipated, right? And this is borne out further by the fact that we have the Moon, which talks about things that are hidden. Now, I forget the exact astrology that's going on at the moment. But what I do know is that this period that we're in, as well as the fact that we're in a Scorpio season, so always a traditional time of year to be kind of deep diving on our own emotions, the astrology at the moment is showing us things that have always been there, but for whatever reason we have not seen. And this 7 of Swords, like I said, it feels like a slow dawning realization that there is perhaps a narrative that you have been working to, about a situation that you are in, or even the way that you relate to, you know, your own emotions, what your emotions are in the first place, that isn't quite as correct, or even maybe isn't quite as valid as it used to be. You know, things have changed, things have shifted, and where you might have been working with this older narrative, this older way of seeing the world, an older way of understanding who you are at the root of it, there's so much more going on there, and so much that you have not seen. Now, I don't usually pull clarifiers with mid-month readings, but I do feel inclined to do so for you right now, because the Moon does suggest that there are things that are ready to come to light. It's a card of introspection, yes, but it's a card of the internal place. It's a card of the things that are hidden. Now, if it had come up in the reverse, I would think that these things have now come to light and you are now seeing them. But actually, it's still somewhat obscured because it's come up in the upright. Tell me about this 9 of Cups. We've got the Death card in reverse. Tell me about the Nine of Cups, please, in reverse. Oh, there's a whole heap of cards that have come out here. We've got the Five of Cups, the Five of Swords, the Eight of Wands, and the Tower. Like, that's with the Five of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck. There are a lot of cards here that are three out of the four. Get that shut. 3 out of these 4 cards here are quite challenging energy. Right? You've got 3 fives with this this Five of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck here. And Aquarian Insight, when she was on YouTube, she always used to refer to the fives as the agents of chaos. And there is really something in that, because that 4 energy of cards in the preceding cards, right, it is quite foundational stuff. When the fives come along, it's about blowing that up, not to punish you, not to make things difficult, but to enable you to take what works and move forwards with that and leave everything else behind. Now, the Five of Pentacles, you know, my kind of go-to keyword for that is not tending to your own essential needs. That's not the phrase that I was looking for. I forgot my own key phrase, right? Your own basic needs, the very things that you need for survival, or, you know, being afraid of losing things that you need. When we combine it with a card here, the Five of Cups, which is a card of loss, a card of grief, or a card of focusing on those things that you have lost rather than the things that remain. We've got the Five of Swords here, which indicates kind of shonky thought patterns, to be honest. A bit of cognitive dissonance, perhaps. But then we've got the Eight of Wands and the Tower. And it seems to me, with this Nine of Cups in reverse and the Death card in reverse as well, what we've got is a situation where there is this realization that you are not as happy as you thought you were, Capricorn, and that you're holding off on an ending. Now, whether that is because, whether it's because you are trying to make something work that's right in front of you, you know, whether that is a work relationship or, you know, an intimate relationship, whatever it is, maybe a situation altogether, there's a sense of not accepting the endings as they are trying to come in, because you're trying to hold on to something that wants to leave. Now, has this not been a theme that's been coming up for you quite a bit, Capricorn? I think that perhaps it has. And there's something to do with this ending, the one that you are trying to prevent, that is somewhat, it feels like I'm being shown like a, you know, like a wooden prop kind of holding up an old mine shaft, you know what I mean? You take that prop away and the possibility of the whole tunnel collapsing is really, really high. And yet, for some reason, this is what is being pushed forwards for you. It's almost like you need to let this particular thing end, this little thing, this particular thing collapse, whatever it is. How about the moon? What is hidden here, please? We've got the Two of Wands in reverse, and we've got the Hanged Man in reverse, with the Two of Swords at the bottom of the deck, right? So the card is, the moon card is that of the internal place, right? What is hidden within you. And then we've got 3 cards that speak about an internal positioning. Now, the Two of Swords is one of a kind of willful refusal to see what is right in front of you. But that does imply that on some sort of level that you do know what that is. Like, Capricorn, you are the sign of all of them that I've read for this year where that notion has come up over and over again. Like, you cannot avoid something quite so studiously as you have for as long as you have if you didn't know that it was there, right? Statistically speaking, you should have tripped across it at some point, but no, you're kind of like, no, I know what that is. I'm going to put that in that cupboard under there, shut the door, and I am never going to open that cupboard. I just don't want a part of it, right? That's what I mean about the willful refusal there. But then we've got the Two of Wands in the reverse, a crossroads card, yes, talking about the need to make a decision about the way that you live in some way or another, right? But showing up in the reverse, it's like I don't want to have to think about the consequences of going one way over another. I'm just going to keep going forwards. I don't want any deviation from this path. And then we have this Hanged Man. It's a card of Pisces. Now, when it's upright, it talks about submission. It sometimes talks about sacrifice. But ultimately, it does talk about seeing things from a different perspective so that you can gain wisdom, right? It's also a card of some stasis, because you're not moving anywhere if you're hanging off a tree, right? But the fact that it's come up in reverse is almost like you don't want to open that door and walk through it and see things from a different perspective, because there's something of a collapsing narrative here. You know, I know I'm mixing my metaphors up, but there's a collapsing narrative about who you are, why you are here, even perhaps to a degree your identity too, that is kind of grinding resolutely forwards, even though you are trying to ignore it, you know. We've got the Eight of Cups here, and that is a card of indicating that there are emotional positions that you are currently holding at the moment that are holding you back in some sort of way, and there is that need now to start moving away from it. Now, the Hangman in reverse suggests to me that it's, you know, rather than gracefully accepting a halt in proceedings so that you can stop and flip yourself upside down and have a look and see if you know, if it's coming, if a different perspective here is necessary. It's kind of just like resolutely moving forwards, being quite happy that you don't know what secretly you do know. I hope that this makes sense. Now, this is, you know, I was just musing on the fact that Venus is about to move into Capricorn. And it's going to be there for about 5 months, I think. So it's going to be there direct, but it's also going to station, and then it's going to retrograde as well in Capricorn before it goes direct again. I think it's something like March next year. There's a heavy emphasis placed on your relationships, but also the way that you experience relationships, the way that you show up in relationships, and what those actually mean to you. You know, this is going to be a focus for you, Capricorn, certainly as far as March. But let's have a look and see why you are in this energy at the moment, because these last few readings that I've done for you, with perhaps the exception of the last one, I can't quite remember, they do seem to be pushing you towards this self-analysis, this self-exploration, but also looking at its expression outside of you. So those people that you choose to keep around and the way that those relationships are running. Tell me why Capricorn is in this energy, please. We have the Emperor, we have the Wheel of Fortune, and we have the Three of Pentacles, right? So there we see the Emperor, Aries energy. We've got the Wheel of Fortune, Sagittarius energy, and then we've got that Three of Pentacles. We have the Five of Wands at the bottom of the deck, the card of conflict. And it's the card that's sat behind that is the Four of Cups. Now, this Five of Wands could indicate ructions that are happening in relationships around you. That is entirely possible, but it also can speak to a degree of tension and conflict within oneself. Like if you were trying to hold these different positions within you, which is just like everything is fine, everything is fine. And I'm kind of thinking of that meme, you know, of the dog in holding a mug, just staring wildly forwards while everything is around it on fire. You know, this is fine, this is cool. There's that sort of feel about it. But internally, you know that things are not fine. And there's an inevitability here about this. Now, the Emperor and the Wheel of Fortune seem to me to be two sides of the same energy that is at play for you right now. Because on the one side we have the Emperor, we have this notion of control, right? And the Emperor is the King of Kings. He contains the archetype, well, he is the archetype that contains all of the characteristics of all of the kings. And so we're going to have the King of Pentacles in there, but also the King of Wands, King of Cups, King of Swords, right? But he controls everything. He has an empire to run. And on the one side of this, we've got very active control on one side, you know, how you make your life work, how you achieve those things that you set out to do, you know, whatever your goals are, in whatever respect. But then we have this spanner in the works, which is the Wheel of Fortune. Because as it's appearing here, it's under the Nine of Cups in reverse, and it's also under the Death card in reverse. Now, one cannot resist the Death card and the death energy when it comes along. Rarely refers to, you know, actual physical death. More it talks about a change of state, a transformation from one thing to another. The Wheel of Fortune here is showing me that there is a lesson to be learned here on how far it is that you can control things before it is taken away. Right? Your ability to be able to control this thing is taken away from you. Because in whatever way it is that you are trying desperately to hold on to something that is past, there are bigger energies at play here. There are bigger forces at play here for you. And there seems to be a need for you to find a way to honor everything that makes you successful, right? The ways in which Capricorn, who understands the need for stability and security and good foundations on things, like you're not afraid of working hard for stuff, and you won't take shortcuts either. But sometimes life is what happens while you're busy turning your eyes, making a plan, you know, in a different direction. I think it was John Lennon who said that. Oh, what an intriguing vehicle. Some weird Toyota thing that looks like it dates from the 1950s. Anyway, tell me about this Wheel of Fortune, please. We've got the Knight of Wands that's fallen out kind of sideways, and then we've got the Ace of Swords in reverse. And we've got that Seven of Swords at the bottom of the deck again. And there's yet another indication that you're not being entirely honest with yourself. Now, possibly that's to do with a Sagittarian, if you've got a Sagittarian in your midst. But what do we have here? The Three of Swords, the Queen of Swords, and the Five of Wands. Well, the Queen of Swords is Libran energy. But we've got heartbreak and we've got conflict again showing up here, either side of this Queen of Swords. Now, the Queen of Swords looks for truth, right? She's a lower echo of the Justice card, just like the King of Swords is in some ways, right? And to me, her greatest asset is her ability to be able to pass a great deal of information and work through it to find out what is true, what is not, what is relevant, what is not, right? It's a very discerning energy. But she's trapped here by heartbreak on one side and conflict on the other. And it's all coming out with this Ace of Swords and this Knight of Wands in reverse. Now, if you're not dealing with a Sagittarian, and I want to point out the Wheel of Fortune is a Sagittarian card as well, so it's possible there. What you've got with the Knight of Wands is an ability to be present, which is not currently sitting comfortably as it should do, because it's come out sideways. It's almost like there's an intent there, but the behavior is not matching it. You're like, yes, I understand that it's important to be present, but, and you keep sliding off to something else. And in doing so, it's almost like you're eluding this central truth that the Wheel of Fortune is trying to show you at that time, at this time. It is for me like a teaching moment here. But it's a teaching moment that is backed up by forces bigger than you. And although we don't see the tower here yet, for months I've felt this tower kind of looming around in the background. Like, we don't see it, but we feel it coming. There's pain here, there's conflict, there's hurt here. There's an indication that you are not yet nearly as happy as you are telling yourself that you are. And we've got the Ace of Cups at the bottom of the deck here. This card that talks about the need to have one's heart wide open, to be open, to be receptive, but to also be forgiving and compassionate. And I feel like this is entirely required to be self-directed, which means that it's missing within you at the moment, right? Now, I understand when things are, we all get ourselves into these situations where we tell ourselves one thing while secretly knowing and being afraid that there might be another way. But you're being asked to balance yourself out here. You're being asked to put this Knight of Wands the right way up, to be present and to mean it, right? Which is not to say you can't have a plan, and it's not to say that you cannot bring structure into your life, but there's potentially just a little bit too much of it. There's a little bit too much control. And if you don't right the situation, then it will be righted for you. Now, this last card here, there's Three of Pentacles. You know, why are you in this energy in the first place? There. We know that Capricorns are exceedingly private creatures, right? Not like Scorpios, where sometimes, you know, they're so private that they come across as very, very guarded and almost secretive, right? There's always that idea that you're not getting everything out of a Scorpio, and never will you, you know? You can sometimes come across as a little bit sketchy, right? We don't have that with Capricorn. What we have is somebody who is so intensely private that sometimes there are bits of themselves even that they don't engage with. Instead, the focus is turned in a different direction. But the meaning of the Three of Pentacles is working together with someone else, right? It's teamwork, it's collaboration. And we've got here on this card, we've got, you know, two hands pulling on a rope. There's some heavy lifting being done there. I've just noticed I've got the Knight of Cups at the bottom of the deck here. And so many hands make light work, Capricorn, and perhaps some of the things that you have been private about, it is time for those things to come up, to reach the surface, to have some daylight put on them. And the message is that you don't need to do it alone. There are people around you that will support you. Tell me about this Three of Pentacles, please. Thank you. We've got the Nine of Pentacles. We've got the Nine of Pentacles and the Page of Swords. Yeah, right. So independence doesn't need that mean that you have to be a complete island, all of your own, right? We've got the Hierophant at the bottom of the deck. It has, perhaps, at times in the past, felt like that was the case for you. But actually, the Page of Swords here is an indication that there's information coming in that changes the way that you think, right? And what is being changed is your idea of what independence looks like, yes, but also success. Because the Nine of Pentacles is that card of success, right? It is that card of having done it all by yourself and that being a good thing, not being reliant on other people, right? But there is a difference between dependence and interdependence. And if you are sharing your life in any respect with other people, then interdependence is actually a thing that it's a really good quality to have. You don't have to do everything by yourself, Capricorn, because there are people around you who are not just willing to help, but are really willing to shoulder some heavy burdens here to help get you to the place that you need to be. And where you need to be is less here and more here. Now, I'm not talking about other people doing the work for you, because that would be absolute anathema to a Capricorn, and it runs contrary, in fact, to, you know, everything that we know about the nature of doing our own spiritual work. But there's much more help around you than you anticipate. For whatever reason it is that you're trying to keep everything the same, as things start to fall apart, and there is an indication here that things might fall apart, or at least from your perspective appear to fall apart a little bit. It's giving you an opportunity to kick out all of those things that you do not need, that are still stuck in here. You know, whatever it is that you've stuck in the cupboard and refused to look at with the willful refusal, it seems like you might have ventured back to that cupboard a number of times, but only to put other things in. This emotional stuff can be messy and irrational, and it runs entirely contrary to the way that you have chosen to live your life, you know. And sometimes to build a good structure, and particularly when you're building it with other people, you need to tear down the ones that are, you know, occupying ground that are just derelict. Got to let those things collapse so that you can build something more secure, something more stable for you in future. Need some cards of advice, please. So we have the Ace of Cups, and we have the Star. We have the King of Pentacles, and we have Awakening. Like, what we see here is a shift. Like, there you are again. Queen of Pentacles is at the bottom of the deck again. This time followed by the Ten of Swords and the Five of Cups. So it is there, right? There's an opportunity coming here for you. This is what all of this work that you've been doing this year is pushing you towards, is to change your perspective, right? Not on the things that have hurt you and wounded you, but on the fact that you are hurt and wounded, full stop, right? And that, in fact, there are incredible lessons to be drawn from dark periods of your life. It's not always about distracting yourself with something you can throw your focus into that is outside of you. It's about going within here. And see it again with the Ace of Cups. It's an absolutely beautiful card, but it's about cracking open all of that emotion. Now, you know, I've been castigated before about, you know, focusing on the fact that the Capricorns have a difficult relationship with their emotions. You know, I've had people in the comments say, well, you know, we're perfectly emotional, thank you very much. You know, we deal with emotional things every day. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not talking about your everyday emotional stuff. I'm not saying that Capricorns are robots. What I'm saying is there is deep hurt in here. And at this point, it's hurting you, but it's potentially leaking out and hurting other people too. Now, the other people thing is kind of sideways to what I'm looking at here, because there are big shifts coming up for you, Capricorn, and really big shifts. And I think that some of you at least might have been questioning the path that you've been on, right? And then you might have just sort of stamped that down a little bit and said, no, we're on a fine path here, thank you very much, it's all good. Because the idea of ripping the rug out from underneath yourself seems like the greatest act of self-sabotage that you could commit. But what I'm seeing here is that this continued blinkered movement forwards, refusing to stop, refusing to look back or look within or whatever, is actually the act of self-sabotage that is going on at the moment. You know, better a small period of instability, particularly when you have people around you who are willing to help, who want to help you build, than a lifetime of hiding from your own feelings of conflict. Hiding from those bits of you that are trying to pop out, and you just keep pushing them back down with your feet. You know, the Ace of Cups is about the way that you feel about yourself. It's opening yourself right up, forgiving yourself for anything that you feel needs to be forgiven for, you know, rather than just pretending that it didn't happen, you know, whatever. And letting the emotional side of you really let rip, Capricorn, because you are the sea goat. You know, you're one of those rare signs that, although, you know, you are granted the assignation of an earth sign, that you have that other element in there too. You know, water, the sea goat. You are designed to be able to go through your emotions, to swim through your emotions almost, you know. Even on this little coin I've got here, you know, we literally have the sea goat. You can't see it because it's all pitted and discoloured now, but there is a goat. It has a fishtail right there. And we've spoken at length about why it is that you've come to a place where you've put your emotions to one side and said, no, I don't want to deal with those. That's too messy. It's illogical. And it all comes back to an invalidation of your sensitivities when you were young. You know, whatever you were emotional about, you were shown that that was not the way forwards for you. It wasn't about what you felt. It wasn't about the fact that you just were, that you existed. It was about what you achieved. And so naturally, you changed your focus towards those things. And I imagine you've done very well. But it's been at the expense of your inner space. And, you know, the astrology, and now, you know, this, is pointing you towards the need to just stop, just for a little bit, accept a little bit of instability, so that you can be working with all of the wisdom that you actually have at your fingertips. You know, there's a heavy shadow being cast over this reading. And the shadow is merely that which we disavow in ourselves. It doesn't mean it's the bad things. It's just the things that we perceived as bad about ourselves at some point in the past. And for you, that was emotional reactions. Right? Somebody turned around and went, stop crying. Stop being such a baby. You know, Or maybe they didn't say that, but maybe they just did not respond. You know, when you were looking for comfort, that comfort was not forthcoming. But, you know, positive input came when you came back from school with an A grade on something, or, you know, a school report that said you were, you know, the brightest kid in the class, whatever it was. Because you're being asked to make connection. Because is this the thing that's really, really troubling you the most, Capricorn? There are probably many connections that you have around you, you know, decent group of friends, that's all cool, but there's something missing, right? Between the very, very heart of you and where everybody else gets to come in. You know, there's a gap there that people can't traverse. And you're aware of that gap, but you don't want to explore that gap and see what it is, because you don't want to know what it says about you. And the fact is, it doesn't say anything about you other than, here's a wound, let's heal it. You know, Star card's all about healing, and it's about hope, and it's about the future, but it's very strongly about connection to me. You know, you heal your connection to yourself, you heal your connection to something very spiritual outside of you too. You know, the last two cards that we've got are the King of Pentacles and the Awakening card that came out together. Now, the King of Pentacles is Taurus energy, but very much like you, it's concerned with stability, security, commitment, not taking, you know, shortcuts. It's a card of great responsibility, actually, and a sense of responsibility for others around you, you know. And maybe it is that you told yourself that it was very, very important that you did this. You know, in some ways, Capricorn, it's almost like you sacrificed yourself for the well-being of other people. Okay, I'm gonna cope with having a terrible work-life balance because I need to provide for my family, right? I need to look after people, you know, or maybe it's even your team at work, you know, whatever it is. But what you're being shown here, Capricorn, is that sacrifice actually is unnecessary. And there is a great deal of fulfillment, not just for you, but other people, if you can just step back a couple of paces and allow yourself to explore this space here. Because with the Judgment card there, as that is, but I think Awakenings is a great card here because it speaks about something opening up within you. Now, I don't know if you can see this card, but she's actually shedding a skin, this angel. And we're assuming it's this human suit, right? And there are those incredible set of wings that are inside there. There is a liberation here for you. If you are willing to slough off the skin of who you have been for a very long time, or even, you know, what you told yourself you were, there's a whole different type of life experience open to you. If you can take the time to be kind to yourself and have a look and see inside what needs healing. And I would suggest that this is kind of a good place to start, given the way that Venus is going into Capricorn and then will retrograde in Capricorn and then be in Capricorn again. Because that's going to put a lot of focus on your relationships there. And certainly while Venus is in retrograde, if any relationships that you have are in kind of troubled waters at the moment, you can expect that to really kind of amp up a little bit as you are asked to look at your relationships. But as we all know, if you're not being honest with yourself about your relationship or with yourself and what you want from relationships, what you get from relationships, whether that gap exists there or not, then you have no chance of showing up in a relationship in an authentic way. Like I said, it's not about knowing just what makes you happy. It's not about going, oh, here's my perfect partner, they make me happy. No, it's the knowledge that you are entirely responsible for your own happiness and your own well-being. And taking it forwards from there. Because I think that you've realised that there are gaps and there are bits where it's just not quite as good as you thought that it was. I think this is one of those situations where if you can take the time to do this, Capricorn, you're going to have a few dark nights where you're like, fuck. But you can apply that compassion and kindness to yourself. You're going to find yourself writing in a way that, and I mean as in coming right, far, far swifter than you had thought. Because this capacity resides within you. It's just not being explored. Right, I've been rattling on for like 37 minutes, so I'm going to go now. I really hope that this was useful. And it's just something to bear in mind, the Venus thing as well, you know, moving forwards. Yes, I could prattle on for another 20 minutes, but I won't do that. So know that I love you all very, very much, and I will see you soon.